Hello, I'm here today to talk about one of the biggest problems in information security, IP theft, a $600 billion problem. We read headlines all the time about how competitors steal from one another as they hire employees away, or how nation-state sponsored hackers are trying to access critical research and technologies developed by the US or other countries. And just last week, we read about a case of IP theft involving partners, Microsoft and Intel. Why is this such a big unsolved problem? Well, it fundamentally comes down to a problem of classification. If you can't accurately identify the data, you have no chance of protecting it. And if we look at the current state of the art in DLP and data protection products, all classification is based on content inspection, scanning the content to try and find patterns in the data and matching it to data that we deem as sensitive. Now, this approach may work for certain types of data like PII and PCI data, but it does not work for IP, intellectual property that you must protect, such as machine learning models or source code or design documents or research data. None of this data has any well-formed pattern to it, and therefore DLP products are incapable of identifying them accurately and cannot protect them. Cyberhaven believes a fundamentally different approach is needed. We applied the concept of data lineage to this problem. And if you think about lineage in other contexts, you recognize it's a very powerful enabler for so many capabilities. Think about how cookies track our movements on the web and how that now allows us to get personalized experiences and secure sign-on, or how GPS tracks our movements in the real world and what sort of interesting capabilities that has enabled. In a similar vein, data lineage will become a powerful enabler for so many different capabilities in the enterprise, and the first of those is more effective data protection. Now, every piece of data has a story to tell, and Cyberhaven is the place where you can see the whole story. Let's take a look at an example. Here we have some sensitive data coming out of a SaaS application, Workday, and this is HR salary information. Someone in the HR team has now shared it with the team on Box, and then someone on the team pulled it down from Box and cut and pasted a piece of that data into a presentation that they're building, and then they emailed it out to their team. At the very end of this data flow, you see a malicious user, Eve, that has cut and pasted some of the sensitive data into WeChat. Now, DLP products would try to analyze this egress event or this end of the journey to determine if this was a malicious act or not. Oftentimes, this will lead to a false positive or a false negative. And the only way that we can do a more effective job is we can trace this data all the way back to its source. And knowing that this data came out of Workday and salary data, we definitely don't want that going to WeChat, and we can prevent it. Cyberhaven has built a dynamic data tracing platform. We do 4 things, and we do extremely well. We identify and classify data accurately using provenance and other means. We trace all the movements of that data, both internally and externally to SaaS apps, and both the known and unknown locations, as well as all the derivatives. We then protect your sensitive data, putting in place policies to ensure that sensitive data does not go to risky destinations. And then finally, we educate users. We believe any effective data protection program has to have user education as a key pillar. And we found that effective user education can reduce the number of incidents by up to 10x or more. Now, what does data lineage look like inside Cyberhaven? Here's the example that I showed you earlier. And you can see here, we trace all of the steps in the journey of this data, and we see all of the different permutations of this data as it's propagated throughout the organization. And we can see here very clearly and quickly that this flow is something that we want to prevent. Now, when we zoom out from the detailed data flow, we look at high-level risk for my organization. And you can see we've created data sets and we track the movement of that data, both externally to dangerous destinations, but we also trace the movements of that data internally, because data sprawl is a precursor to data exfiltration and expanding your attack surface. So the more you understand how data is sprawled in your organization, the better job you can do of overall data protection.